If you've played any competitive game for an extended period of time, I'm sure you've discovered the three types of players: the player for fun, the scrub, and Michael Jackson. The person playing for fun finds the game its own intrinsic entertainment. They might be a player with or without goals and aren't impervious to frustration, but they're playing for the value of the game itself. The scrub is playing with the expectation that the game revolves around them, is fixated on the results, and will make excuses as to why they don't see the results that they want. In team games, this often manifests as, "My teammates always suck, I can't catch a break," which is true! In independent games, this often presents itself as, "This character is broken," or "This guy plays dumb, I'm better than him," as they proceed to lose 0-10. Michael Jackson appears when the player constantly repeats the mantra, "I'm bad." Every player can be, and most likely at one point has been, one of these three player types. But of everyone here, I think that the last in the queue is the least discussed, which is a shame because this type of thought pattern is destructive to your ability to improve. Some of you may be questioning that statement. After all, "I'm bad" is a reflection of your own ability. It shows an acknowledgement for your lack of skill. The issue is that "I'm bad" mentally dismisses your own ability as a player, creates a cycle of negative expectations, and can shut off your ability to play into situations that lead to the outcome that you're looking for. It's not bad that you can identify that you're not achieving the goal that you want, but to fixate on your lack of achievement leads to you making bad choices and makes failure an expectation regardless of the situation. When you go to put yourself in a situation, there's going to be a desired goal and the variables that need to align to achieve that goal. Let's take a gunfight in Halo, which is a game with an incredibly high time to kill for a shooter. Your goal is to get to snipes and kill this person who's currently in the position, so the variables are aim, distance, positioning, sightlines, stuff like that. You take the gunfight and you lose, and so you decide to take the fight again, recognizing that you missed a shot in the fight, or a nade dropped in a bad position. However, you keep taking the fight and you're losing over and over and over again. "I'm bad. I suck. I'm gonna go and flood my Twitter timeline with sadness posting. I need to get better at aiming, nade placement, strafing, because those are the direct blocks that stopped me from winning that fight." However, I've recognized the situation incorrectly. I've identified that I didn't win this gunfight because of the variables that I have direct control over, but I've only identified the ones that have a very immediate impact. In reality, the problem isn't that I'm losing this gunfight, the problem is that I'm standing in the middle of the map with two other enemies looking at me. Even if I was to win this fight, I still wouldn't achieve the goal that I wanted, because I've identified that I want to win this gunfight, when in reality, I want to be in this position. When you're looking at a situation and you go, "I'm bad," you're incredibly likely to identify what you have immediate control over. However, if you were to identify the situation and instead go, "What went wrong?" you're more likely to look at all of the things that could have potentially led to you achieving a goal, instead of what went wrong in your approach to that goal. And you don't view it that way because you're bad either, it's because that's how most of us normally look at situations. We seek to solve the immediate problem instead of the issue that's causing the problems to occur. In this specific instance, the problem is that going "I'm bad" led us to try to prove that we can win the gunfight, which has very immediate reward, rather than "I'm losing this gunfight," which would have assisted us in taking an alternative approach. If left alone for long enough, we might actually come to solve the immediate problem. Our aim could get significantly better, but because we seek to remedy something that doesn't actually impact outcome, we never move on from the situation. We start to set the expectation that we're going to lose this fight, but we set that expectation based on bad aim even if we have good aim. This in turn leads to a lot of frustration, which causes underconfidence, which can do many things, like creating habits, feeling desperate to find an answer to a problem that doesn't exist, and a general lower quality in mood. Now, the solution isn't to get rid of emotion. You're not a machine, you're a person, and try as much as you might, removing that isn't really possible. Instead, you need to look at that emotion and use it to identify what's causing you stress and work backwards from there. Maybe not right there and then in the moment, but perhaps in retrospect. The emotion you feel is because of a position that you've put yourself in, or one that you're being put in. You don't start the match and go from fine to fuming, you start the match and go from fine to lightly irritated to monkey throw fight stick at wall. And that progression starts from something that you either don't understand or struggle to deal with. If I find myself getting slowly annoyed by something that my opponent's character is doing, I need to use that as an indicator of what I need to look at next. It might be something very simple and concrete, like dropping combos annoys me, or something very vague, like I just don't like this character. When it comes to something vague, you need to start breaking the problem down into smaller pieces. I don't like this move, I don't like this block string, this just never seems to work against this character. From there you can start to focus on the problem and develop an idea of what you need to solve. Just be careful to not tunnel vision yourself into looking for a solution if there isn't one. Sometimes there's solutions to situations, but just because you can solve a problem doesn't mean that you should. If you find a solution to a problem, but that solution is hard or high commitment for low reward, instead consider what you could do to not be in that position. You might not be able to take yourself out of a position, but knowing where you don't want to be can sometimes be a stronger starting place than where you do want to be. What doesn't help is that sometimes we can paradoxically make it harder to solve a problem by fixating on the issue. I'm sure many of you you have had this feeling in fighting games. You've learned a combo, but you just can't seem to hit it in a match. Every time you play, you find that you forget the combo, or you drop it at specific points. You go back to training mode and then proceed to repeat the combo. Sometimes you hit it and sometimes you drop it, but when you come back to a match, you go in with a hard set goal that you're going to hit that combo. You get one opportunity to hit that combo, you drop it, you lose. I'm bad. The problem here is quite numerous, to be honest. Because you've set the goal, you're more likely trying to force yourself to be in a position where that opportunity presents itself. You're basically starting the match tilted off the face of the moon. As time goes on, you start to play in ways that are suboptimal or aren't how you would normally play because you're trying to rush the goal process. Eventually, you're losing the match and you haven't even been afforded the correct opportunity to reach the goal because you're trying to force it, which opens you up to being put in more dangerous situations. Not only do you start to feel a sense of failure because you never reached your goal, but because you also played what you would consider poorly, you didn't achieve the macro level result of winning the match. This then starts to build into anxiety as you see a history of failure predict the path of the future. You might only recognize that you've been dropping the combo, but the emotion that you feel comes from all of the other goals that seem to have been failed alongside it. The solution here is to temporarily drop another goal so that this action becomes a habit. Different goals will require different approaches, and different levels of play and mental resolve will require their own unique solutions. If I was to have this problem myself, it might be a case of lowering the stakes. Instead of going into a ranked match after landing a combo in training mode, I might hop into a player match, or even an arcade match. This way I still have the same goals, but the potential failure that I will be on the receiving end of is diminished by holding no repercussion. This allows me to not fixate on failure, but instead let the natural learning process of failure and success take its course. I'm bad becomes I'm learning, and what I believe is the most important factor here is that switch in wording. This simple change in outlook is what I deem the most important when removing the I'm bad mentality. In the book The Mental Game of Poker, it's described as injecting logic. Phrases like bad players have to win, it's just variance, keep playing well and stay in control, take ideas like I'm on a bad beat and reword it to stabilize and reflect the actuality of the situation. The phrases I'm bad or I suck can similarly be reworded to inject logic into the current situation. Dropped combos happen, it's part of the process. Might be a rewording that works for you to see the reality of the situation. One of the times that I'm bad occurs that I think needs to be scrubbed from most players is after a loss. My opponent made choices that were stronger than mine is a better rewording. It's not that you're bad, it's that you're making choices that your opponent is either covering or reading ahead of. It's the stark difference between looking at the end results of a match and going, I lost or my opponent won. Naturally, you lean towards failure because of the negativity bias, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to fight that instinct. Just because you lost doesn't mean that you didn't play well. The point that seems the most toxic about the I'm bad mentality is that it removes your own achievement. Who cares how much you've played and how knowledgeable you are, the amount of effort that you've invested? After all, you've been on a loss streak for 2 days. You suck. It's not like this is part of the learning process. Nobody in their right mind goes on a losing streak. The value to your quality isn't respective to your immediate situation. Stop saying you're bad. You've invested time, you've learnt, you've developed, and though it's not unnatural to be disappointed by your current position or have negative emotions, it shouldn't be an opportunity to beat yourself up. Which is the real problem with this mentality. I've got enough issues with how it affects your game, but if you repeat this rhetoric enough to yourself, it starts to spill over into the real world. Without being too pretentious, when you invest a lot of time into something, you're inevitably going to feel a slight sense of self-worth reflected back at you through your results. When the results start to slip, it's entirely natural to feel a sense of negative emotion come from that, but to beat yourself up over it and see that as a reflection of your own person is a problem. Acknowledging failure is fine, but to use it as a reflection of your own self-worth is incredibly toxic, and it's something that I, in the past and still to an extent today, currently do. This is a bit embarrassing, but playing poorly makes me feel very stupid. Not only because I'm playing poorly, and that makes me feel bad, obviously, but also because I use it as an opportunity to reflect on my education and occupation, which I see as less than positive. Occasionally I find myself playing multiplayer games for a sense of validation, which isn't the right approach. I go from acknowledging failure to using that failure as an example of how I am worthless. If you connect with the sentiment that I just laid out before you, you might want to kind of reconsider why you're playing these games. To an extent, I feel like the majority of us that have tried to play a game to a competitive level have had some of this emotion rub off on us at some point. However, if you find this emotion quite suffocating, I'd like you to take the opportunity to kind of reanalyze why exactly you're doing things. It's entirely natural to strive for progress, but it's not necessarily healthy to require progress to feel any positive emotion. Whether you're good, bad, or somewhere in the middle, what's important is that you're having a good time and you're not beating yourself up over your current position. Hopefully you can take some of this video and use it to inform your decisions in the future, whether that be solving a matchup, a position, or figuring out whether you want to be playing at all. Regardless of what you take away from this video, I hope you had at the very least a decent time, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.